I see
How's it
it.
going, everybody? Welcome to the show. Before we get started, let me just say that I'm an idiot, and we did this whole show. It went really well. I got to the end, and I didn't hit record. So Matthew is kind enough to donate another hour of his time to do this whole thing again. Um,
Dude,
what a
I was saying I could talk about this stuff all day. I'll miss work. Dude, I'll file for unemployment, collect some government checks, and talk about Foo Fighters.
man. So they have 10 studio albums. We're including Medicine at Midnight on this list, even though at the time of us recording this video, that's pretty new. I'd only heard it for the first time 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I kind of feel bad ranking that against albums that I've spent 10 years listening to, but we're going to do it anyway. So take in my placement of that, take it with a grain of salt, because I'd like to spend some more time with it and just listen to it a few more times. A band we both love, man, Foo Fighters. Matt, especially. You were telling me, well, see, this is what this episode's going to turn into, is me referencing things that didn't get recorded on the first episode. So let me just stop talking, and we'll just start this list off and see how it goes again. So, you want to go ahead with your number 10?
Yeah, man. So it might be a little unfair to put it this low, but it's new. I hadn't had as much time, like you were saying, to listen to it, but it's going to be Medicine at Midnight. It's it's a different approach. Like I was saying, the Foo Fighters always take a new approach to their recording their studio albums, and this is the sound of the music is let's say different. It's I was referring to it as a kind of 2010s indie sound to it. Nothing really caught my ear. There's not really a hit. They put that Shame song out kind of as their first single, and that's how I found out about the album. They didn't really, they may have promoted it, but it flew under the radar for me. I found out about this new album from them playing on SNL the day they found out the election results for the 2020 presidency. But yeah, nothing that really stands out about it. I saw on their, I guess, the credits list, Dave Grohl's daughter makes an appearance on the vocal tracks, but aside from that, nothing really stands out.
Yeah.
Might move it around later after listening to it more, but yeah.
I think on this list, the bottom few were the only bit that was easy to choose. Like from mid up, it's so hard to stack these projects against each other and figure out what I objectively like more. So my number 10, I thought about Medicine at Midnight at number 10, but in the end, I had to give the coveted worst album spot to Sonic Highways from 2014. I don't think Foo Fighters have a bad album. I'm going to say that with bad, but Sonic Highways is the closest they ever got to making a bad album. It's a cool idea, traveling around the country and recording in different cities and letting different sort of musical locales influence the songwriting. Love the ambition of that. Love the idea. Don't think the execution really lived up to the promise. The songwriting is pretty forgettable. The production is kind of inconsistent to my ear, track to track to track. It's short, really short. Might be their shortest. I can't remember how short Medicine at Midnight was.
Yeah, it's I think it's 8 songs is Sonic Highways. I think Medicine at Midnight has more than that. Couldn't tell you how many off the top of my head.
Yeah, and it's just I feel bad shitting on Foo Fighters because they seem like such a cool band, guys that you are rooting for, even though they're very successful. But this one wasn't great, and that was fairly easy to put that at the bottom of my list. Just not a lot to talk about memorable songwriting or otherwise on that one.
Yeah, man. That was my next one. Number 9 is Sonic Highways. It's hard to pick number 10 and 9 for that reason. Like I said, the promotion for Medicine at Midnight Did not see any of that at all. Opposite for Sonic Highways. They had an HBO special recording all these songs. They had a lot of big names on it too. They had the New Orleans Preservation Hall Band. They had Zach Brown, Gary Clark Jr., just to name a couple.
Yeah.
The one song I did like from it was "I Am a River" is their last song, the one they recorded in New York. But all the points you made, consistency isn't great. The concept is super cool, super fascinating concept, but poor execution. Yeah, I don't really not a lot to say about that. And I bought into the hype. Like I pre-sale, like bought their vinyl album, and it's one of the 2 vinyl Foo Fighters I own. I need to get some more, so I don't have to say I only have Sonic Highways and their debut. But yeah, man, I'll stop talking about
Yeah. No, I mean,
Sonic Highways.
it's almost hard to talk about because despite the ambition of the concept, there's not a lot there that hits you. You know, it's just like it's okay, I guess. It
Can't
made
really
a much
talk about the
better
music.
made a much better TV show than an album in the end.
Yeah.
So my number 9 is Medicine at Midnight. Again, I toyed with putting that even lower. It's not terrible, but again, it just doesn't stick with you at all after you hear it. It's well produced, well mixed, as pretty much all Foo Fighters projects would be after the debut. The one thing that like immediately stood out to me, and I think you mentioned something along the lines of the tonal shift for them was kind of stark. I immediately was like, man, this almost sounds like a kind of Christian rock gospel type vibe. And I didn't really enjoy it for the most part. Making a Fire is the lead track. I guess it's one of the stronger ones. I don't actually mind Shame Shame that much. It just doesn't, it wouldn't make like a Foo Fighters best of playlist, but I don't hate it. Yeah, I mean, it's again a really short record. It just didn't feel like it needed to happen to me. It didn't feel like they had a concept or an idea or something that excited them to make music. It feels like something they just kind of like, I mean, they're skilled guys. So if they make music, it's not going to be the worst music you ever heard, but it doesn't feel like they were particularly inspired on this one to me. So that's my number 9, Medicine at Midnight.
If that doesn't describe number 9 and 10 for our lists, I don't know what does, because they're not talking about the Foo Fighters. It's not bad, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's music. It's there.
It's certainly music.
Yeah. It's there. Some people might enjoy it, man.
Yeah.
Shoot, you ask a stranger off the street which one they like better, Foo Fighters' first album or Medicine at Midnight. They might say Medicine at Midnight. Who knows? But after listening to the full discography, they might change their mind as well.
I would assume so.
Yeah. So at 8, I had Concrete and Gold. That was number. How many did they have? They have 10. I think that was their
7.
This is my number 8 on the list.
No, it was their 7th or 8th album.
I think it's their 9th. They put it out after Sonic Highways.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, 8, 9, and 10 are, for me, are their newest 3 albums. So yeah, this is their 9th. Then I digress. So this one had some more hits. It had a little more promotion as well than Medicine at Midnight. Run being my favorite of the 2 hits. The Sky is a Neighborhood being their other, in my opinion. Run has a super cool music video. I'm sure we'll get more into the music videos as we go along. music video being them in like a retirement home and making all these like 89-year-olds like headbang and like do vapes and donuts in parking lots, stuff like that. Super cool song. It's a banger. No no other song on this album really caught my ear. And something they do, they kind of got into as they went along as a band, was having Taylor Hawkins, the drummer, sing on a track, and I think it was Sunday Rain for this album.
Yeah.
So he took the lead on that one. Other than that, not too much to say about this one.
Yeah, the bottom sort of quarter of both of our lists, it's like there's not a ton to say. It's hard to come up with like interesting takes on this stuff because it's not terrible. The production is never terrible, but there's that side of Foo Fighters music that sometimes is just really forgettable, even though they've got a lot of great ones too. A couple albums kind of just wash over you and you forget about it after they're done. But my number 8, and this was we talked about when we went to re-record this video after I, fucked it up and didn't hit the record button, is like, should I change my list? I'm just going to keep the list the way it was. Even though this one I think might be bumped up a spot if you ask me again tomorrow. So my number 8 is In Your Honor from 2005. Notably, it was the first to feature Rami Jaffe, who is now officially a member of the Foo Fighters, but for like a decade, he was a very frequent session guy who played keys. Typical nice guy Dave to get the longtime session guy officially in the band and give him credits on all the music they came out with since. So this one is just too long in essence. I mean, I don't want to belabor that point too much, but there's some good stuff on the acoustic disc, which is like a whole album length on its own, and there's some good stuff on the hard rock disc, which is a whole length on its own. It's like an hour and a half of Foo Fighters music, and I really think that if they trimmed like half of it, it'd be like one of my favorite albums of theirs, because the highlights are real highlights. I mean, you've got Best of You and DOA. No Way Back is a pretty cool song. Hell is a little thrashy 2-minuter that just is a barn burner. Love that tune.
Yeah.
And Resolve is on this album as well, one of their catchiest tunes overall. And still, and a couple of the Razor I liked as well. But a couple of the acoustic ones I think are really strong. But then about half of the acoustic ones I think are just kind of flyovers for me. They don't do a lot for me. This album is more ambitious in its scope than most of theirs are. I mean, they pretty consistently just put out like an LP sized project. This one, they were like, yeah, we think this is strong enough to be a double LP. And I don't honestly agree. I don't hate it. There's definitely some good songs on there. Again, I'm going to say this every time. The production is super solid. I thought about switching this one up to number 7, but in the end, I'm going to stick with my original list. This is just not one I revisit all that often or care to. So that's my number 8, In Your Honor.
All right, man. Yeah. So mine was, I hate putting this one this low too. Like it kind of kills me. But it's not it's not the whole group. It's their debut album, Foo Fighters, with the ray gun on the cover. Love all the songs, but they're just not. It's just if Dave Grohl had a solo album in the 90s, this is his solo album.
Right.
They're all written and recorded by him, and they just he got some guys together, and they toured and played Dave's music just under a band name. Not to discredit the songs themselves, like it has that grungy kind of heavy sound to them. Watershed is surprisingly my favorite for that reason. It just goes hard. Dave screams on it. YouTube live videos of them playing that song, and he from that era, because he's like in his late 40s, 50s now, early 50s now. He probably can't scream that hard anymore, but he was screaming like he would on the album on that song. It's great. Of course, there's like This Is the Call. This is the other one I own on vinyl as well. But yeah, man, I could go on about these songs more. I'd like to put it higher on the list. It's just not the when you're talking about Foo Fighters, it's more than Dave Grohl to me. It's like you got to consider Nate Mendel and or Mendel. I always change the pronunciation on his name. Taylor Hawkins, Pat Smear is always a Foo Fighter to me. Chris
Yeah.
Shiflett came in later in the game, of course, but you gotta have that core to be considered Foo Fighters, and this is just like a Dave Grohl solo project to me.
Yeah. Tough to rank these, man. It really is, because there's, even though like there's some that are clearly better than others, none of them are like leagues away from each other in terms of quality, really. So it's kind of tough to put these in some kind of objective order.
Right.
My number 7, I'm going to go with one that you rank pretty low as well, and that's 2017's Concrete and Gold. Although I will, little caveat, I will say it's probably my single favorite album cover of theirs. I think that's a really cool, eye-catching album cover. Nothing really wrong with it. Sounds good production wise. The songwriting is decent enough. Sky is a Neighborhood and Run, I think, are the two that you mentioned, and I totally agree. Those are some standout moments. Run is heavy as hell. Love it. I actually have not seen that music video. I need to check that out because the Foo Fighters have so many damn good music videos. What else stood out on that? Arrows was a pretty cool tune as well.
Arrows is nice.
I don't think the sort of like from track to track to track, I don't think the flow of this album is particularly well. I think the standout moments are good moments, but then the rest sort of just like doesn't add very much. It just sort of like you're just sitting through it, getting to the next highlight. And I hate to say that because, again, there's nothing like objectively wrong with these songs production wise or anything. It's just that they're not super memorable. But from here on out, from like 6 and up, we're into I like it territory. And then you get to the top few and you're like, man, I love these albums. So yeah, relatively easy for me to rank my bottom 3 in that spot. But yeah, that's my number 7, Concrete and Gold.
Dude, 7 and up for me is where it's like I just love it. It's heartbreaking enough having to do this once.
Yeah.
Now I have to do it again.
Sorry.
No, it's good, man. I like just talking about them, or it's so fun. I just love talking about Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
So this is 6.
Yeah.
I had In Your Honor. I forgot if you mentioned this. Very cool album art. It's kind of like you're at a play or like a concert, like fancy concert hall, opera hall, if you will.
Yeah.
For us, the Louisville Palace, kind of with the curtains and the I guess the centerpiece would be the eagle on the album.
Yeah.
But aside from the album art, again, I like the concept of it. I think they executed this well for what it was, having a hard rock album and a all acoustic album. There's the In Your Honor is a cool way to In Your Honor, the track, not the album. That's the opener. It just kind of has that build and it gets heavy. This album isn't the heaviest of their discography. They certainly have heavier albums, which is a critique on their rock album. Like you could have gone even harder on some of these songs, but there's some good ones. You mentioned DOA, Hell. What else is there? Best of You, of course. End Over Ends, the closer on the rock one, and it's a closing song. I won't say it's my favorite song on the album, but it's a closer song. Like they have an opening and they have a closing. The flow could be better in between, but it's generally great. On the acoustic album, you mentioned Razor. That's a cool one. The Taylor Hawkins lead vocal I mentioned earlier was Cold Day in the Sun. prefer that song live, but it's a cool recording as well. On the Mend is personally my favorite from the acoustic album. I just thought it was a good way to mix things up, and I think they did a great job of doing that with this album. And as the years went on, and we'll talk about this other album later, I'm sure, but they were able to take this concept their level later on during their my take on In Your Honor.
Yeah.
Are you frozen?
No.
Oh, you're frozen there for me for a second. You're good. You're back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, look, there's definitely good songs on there. I just feel like if you trim out 2 or 3 from each side, then I would rank it like 8 spots up, because there's the highlights are real highlights. It's a long record.
Of music, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot of music.
I don't, we're getting from here on out is where it gets real tough for me to rank these. So number 6, and I'm pretty comfortable with this placement. Number 6 is the debut for me, Foo Fighters, the self-titled from 1995. Again, you said it all, essentially a Dave Grohl solo project. The sort of youthful energy that I hear on this record is pretty infectious, even if the production is pretty clearly the weakest of their whole discography, which makes sense because from what I understand, this is basically like a Dave Grohl demo that has been touched up and mixed and mastered and all that stuff. So bearing that in mind, it's really good songwriting and good musicianship on his part. I'll Stick Around, Big Me. These are great cuts. Alone plus Easy Target, or Lone and Easy Target is a banger. But for me, man, the best parts of this, the real highlights are Good Grief and Weenie Beanie, which are absolutely just like the most aggressive I've heard Dave sing, and he does it so well. I mean, Weenie Beanie is a banger, dude. That's like almost a metal tune. Love that tune. If I had to pick a weak point, it's For All the Cows. I really don't like that song at all. I don't care to hear it ever again.
Really?
I don't like it, man. I can't take it seriously. I'm sorry.
I like that song, man, but I see what you're coming from because it's like Good Grief, Watershed, Weenie Beanie, and then For All the Cows. It's just like why? Like I guess there was a milk shortage or something that year.
It just seems weird, and Dave was like big on, like they played that song live all the time for like a couple years there. I just never understood what he saw in that song, why he thought it was so good. But
it was out there. And on the production side, people have to consider like what you're talking about. It's just old Grohl demos. They've been around for like 26 years now. Like he probably recorded that a year prior to the release. So say 27 years. Recording gear has changed a lot over the span of time. People are recording shit on their phones, and he probably had like a cassette tape and press record. But yeah, man, it's a good take on that album.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. So for me, this is
5.
Number 5. I had The Color and the Shape here. Their sophomore album. I have to mention, their best song to the average Joe, everyone really, is Everlong on this one. They have My Hero on it. They have some great songs on it. Hey Johnny Park. What was it? Did I say Monkey Wrench?
No, not yet.
Monkey Wrench. And it was a cool album. Again, it's kind of infancy of the group. They had a lot of stuff going on. Was it William Goldsmith was the drummer at the time? He was the drummer for them playing live on their debut one as well. I'm interested to hear what he played. So they recorded the album with him, and The Nicest Man in rock and roll, Dave Grohl re-recorded the drums behind his back, and then they kicked him out.
Old.
So I'm interested to hear the Goldsmith drum versions of this album. See how contrasting, because Dave Grohl is like, people put him as like a top rock drummer of all time. That's a whole nother topic I don't want to talk about right now, but he's damn good, and to hear the contrast between the two would be interesting.
Yeah, on the same collection of tracks, that'd be super interesting.
Right. But back to the album, man. Yeah, there's nothing bad about it. It has its aggressive parts. It also has its mellow parts too. Just personally for me, I couldn't put it any higher than it is right now. Yeah. I could probably switch it with the next one given, but that's where I have this one.
We didn't skip one for you, did we?
I may have switched it by accident, but
no. I'm just making we're on number 5 for me, right?
We're on 5.
Okay, cool.
We're on 5.
Boy, what a man. Our first take was so clean, and then I just didn't hit record. Such a pain in the ass.
It's good,
whatever.
Man.
Press on. So my number 5, and from here on out, we're into albums that I revisit on occasion and genuinely like. No qualifications needed. One by One from 2005 is my number, or 2002, excuse me, is my number 5.
2002.
Yeah, notably the first album to feature Chris Shiflett on guitar. He joined the band. All My Life is the first track on the record, and it's one of their strongest songs. Few would argue it's a banger. Great way to start. Again, I feel like every time I say this, but the production is super solid. Great, just whole sounding, rich instrumentation on this. It gets heavier and softer at times than their previous albums. So Low is just about as heavy as they ever get. Banger. Love that song. Times Like These is a bit more mellow, but a great tune as well. Lonely As You was one I wanted to mention. It's kind of a deep cut. It's not mentioned in great Foo Fighters songs discussions all that often, but for me, it's like the band in microcosm. It starts super soft and mellow with some melodic vocals, and it gets like a medium pace where a lot of their songs land, and then it goes super hard at the end and punches like well above its weight. And I think that's the 3 speeds that Foo Fighters have,
yeah,
more or less. That they do really good all in one tune. So if you're just going to listen to like one single Foo Fighters song, if that's all we can get you to listen to, maybe check that one out.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice of a Foo Fighters recommendation. I don't think check out Lonely As You from One by One.
The one, also I should mention the one tune that I do not like on this album is Have It All. And the production, I'm not sure what the idea was here. I'm thinking that they wanted to make a song that felt like it was like absolutely as loud as it could have been, that like it's almost blowing the speakers out at times or whatever. But what ends up happening for me is it becomes unlistenable because every kick and every snare like cancels out the guitar and bass. It's like EDM does that. You know what I'm trying to describe here? Like it goes, oops, and like the rest of the mix comes down because of how big those sounds are. It's so weird. I'm not sure. I know it was intentional, a production choice, because the rest of the album sounds great, but man, I hate that. I don't think that worked at all. That's the one. Oh, and of course they won a Grammy for this one. I'm pretty sure, as they did for like 4 or 5 of their records. That Grammy category of best rock album was basically won by the Foo Fighters, like for 50% of the 2000s.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep talking about this one. This one's on my number 4. I like this one a lot, simply because of All My Life. That's my favorite song of theirs.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, that like the Chris Shiflett is his first album. Such a great ad, and a guitar player, by the way.
Yeah.
Like he's I don't want to call him a jack of all trades. I don't know if he plays hip hop on guitar or any of that, but man, he plays country music. He was a punk rocker, which is appropriate for Foo Fighters because they're all kind of punk rock dudes.
Yeah.
But that was such a great guitar ad, and having Pat Smear later in the mix, all 3 of those guys on guitar is such a great. They function well together. Uh, but the album itself, man, cool album art. So that'd be like if I had to get a tattoo of any of their albums, that'd be the first album art I'd get. Would be that heart, that black and white heart.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of I guess illustrated album art, and that'd be why. But man, you could get all their albums tattooed on you, and I don't think many people, unless you're a Foo Fighter hater, would have to complain about that.
Yeah.
The music itself, yeah, you talked about a lot of their songs. You know, one we didn't mention was Overdrive.
Oh yeah.
On this album, Overdrive's a cool one. It's I like to some of their songs are like kind of poppy.
Yeah.
That's like a poppy one, but it's like catchy too, and it's kind of a forgettable one, but it's a good song.
Yeah.
Overdrive. Oh, I can't remember the words. That one. Disenchanted Lullaby has a great introduction. Great guitar parts. Now that I'm like just thinking about this album,
Yeah.
and Chris Shiflett, there's some the arrangement of those parts are cool, and I think they're really. I mean, they're all guitar driven songs, but because of those arrangements, I think the drums and the bass really fit well with how they do those songs.
Yeah.
Burnaways, okay, I guess. I'm trying to think of songs that you had mentioned already. Tired of You is cool. Do we talk about Low? Low is a banger too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Low, that's that's an interesting music video of theirs as well. It's like that kind of camcorder green, like nighttime, you know, those
Yeah.
they had the notch on your camcorder back in the day when it was at night. It was like kind of, it turned everything green.
Yeah.
And everyone had those like big white glowing eyes looking into the camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool video. It wasn't like their funniest by any means, but it's a great song. And it's yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say about it. The flow of it's pretty decent.
Yeah.
But they have like the albums we're going to talk about coming up have even better flow between song and song, you know.
Yeah, from here on out, there's not much to hate, man. It's just great stuff. So my number 4, and this is, you know, it got really tough from here, man. These top 4 for me probably they could each be number 1 if I was thinking about it a little differently. You know what I mean? There's some comprehensive quality coming up. Number 4 for me is Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace from 2007. Another great album art. Talking about album art, they really had pretty good album art all across their career, and it's I can appreciate that. Just on a side note here is because I recently, for an upcoming one of these that I'm going to do with somebody else, listened to the entire Dire Straits discography. And that's one band where every single album they did had terrible album art. I love the music, but Foo Fighters does not suffer from that. They actually have some pretty good album art. But anyway, I got sidetracked there. In a lot of ways, Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace is what I wanted In Your Honor to be, or what I would prefer In Your Honor to be. Because the idea was, let's explore the softer side and the heavier side of their sound, both of which they do very well, but let's not do it in such a drawn out way that you get tired of one and then get tired of the other. This one is a great mix. It's, 45, 50 minutes. It's sort of your typical LP length. And I think that's just right. I think they explore both sides really well here. On the heavier side, you have The Pretender, Foo Fighters classic. Nobody can hate that song. Let It Die, and Erase, Replace. But honestly is one of my favorite songs. A little underrated.
That's a great one.
Great.
That's one of my favorites from that album. I'm gonna keep talking about this too, because this is my number 3 as well. You mentioned just the flow of it.
Yeah.
In Your Honor, this is the album I was talking about, man. Just the consistency and the flow between kind of acoustic songs and your harder songs.
Yeah.
is great.
And then
I didn't mean to
on the
cut you off.
softer side, you got like Statues, which is one of my favorite slow cuts by them.
Statues is a great one.
Yeah.
They had the ballad of the Beaconsfield Miners. The
Yeah.
is acoustic. I wonder. I don't know who got credited for the guitar part. I'm assuming it was Chris Shiflett, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Dave Grohl. Well, there's a couple guitar parts on there.
Yeah.
But for the I think Dave Grohl wrote it about some miners that got trapped
Yeah,
somewhere in South America.
Inspired by real life events. I just don't remember what the event was.
Or no, I'm thinking of it. Isn't Beaconsfield? I don't know. I was thinking South America. I think there's a big. I can't remember where exactly.
In Chile.
Around Chile. Yeah, it was around the same time.
Yeah, I remember.
And I think
this
one got overlooked.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the. Another one on this is that's it might be a little overrated in some people's eyes, but I kind of think of it as a underrated song of theirs is Long Road to Ruin.
Oh, it's a great tune.
It's I think it was one of their more popular songs from this one, but it was a cool one. Come Alive and Let It Die. Kind of, but honestly too, all have that same vibe, but Come Alive and Let It Die were like I listen to those tracks all the time.
Oh,
they
yeah.
they have that feeling you mentioned. Was it Lonely as You? They kind of had that Foo Fighters element, but where it is, it's like it kind of starts at the bottom of the valley, and it's just like you're going up that roller coaster the entire song.
Yeah.
And by the end, like it's just distortion, heavy drums, Dave's screaming at the end, and it's not like when the heavy stuff hits, it's not like it's a drop off and it goes down. It's like they keep going up.
Oh yeah.
I think it's Let It Die. The ending of the track is just isolated vocals saying, "Why'd you have to go and let it die?"
Yeah.
And that's still heavy. That's like, and it cuts, and then it's like, all right, the song's over. Dives right down.
Nobody can doubt Dave Grohl's ability as a front man. I mean, he's a fantastic front man. His ability to bring like an instrumental dynamic quality to his voice, depending on what best serves the song, is really exceptional. He's great at that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, moving right along. You know what? Actually, there was one more thing that I meant to mention on the Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. And that is like, even though I've got 3 records that I rank above it, I think that's probably the single most like consistent track list. I think that was something I mentioned.
Yeah.
In the first take of this. But man, just such an easy listen from front to back. There's no dip in quality on that at all. So that was your number 3, right? My number 3. My number 3 is. Should I change it? Okay, I'm not going to change it. I keep thinking about it. Yeah, my number 3 is Wasting Light from 2011. Great record. Definitely by far and away the best of like their more recent output. It's a leagues above the other stuff that they've come out with the last few years. Right from the first track, it kicks off with a bang and it gets you excited for the record. Super tight record. Not that long, but definitely like, you know what? This actually might displace Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace as far as the most consistent track list. It is pretty great. The more I think about it, produced in a really old school way. We haven't brought up that documentary that we both like so much about the leading up to the release of this, but that's great as well. I Should Have Known, Walk, These Days, just super solid tracks. And I also want to. Pat Smear's back in the band. That's another notable
Pat Smear, thing. Yeah.
Alandria is a song that I had totally forgotten about before I went back and revisited this discography to make this video. That's a super underrated song. I had totally forgotten about it, man. But yeah, this record is just, they took a big break between this one and the previous one, the longest gap in their studio album career, and I'm glad they did, because they definitely came back with a renewed energy. Just fantastic record, man. This easily could rank higher. Like you could talk me into putting this a little higher.
It paid off to that gap. I'm pretty sure. I know they were nominated for some stuff.
Yeah.
I think they won. I don't know about if they won any Grammys, but I know they won a lot of other awards. Couldn't tell you what they are. Just elsewhere, other whatever
Got
things.
I don't think I mentioned it, but
Butch
Butch
Vig
Vig on production. Yeah.
produced it. Yeah, first time I think him and Dave Grohl worked together since Nevermind.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows. Great production as usual.
Yeah, man, that's a great album. So are we on 2 now?
Yeah,
For me,
so. I think it's your 2. Yeah.
Oh, dude. So this was like honestly the top. I was saying like the top like 7 were hard. It got really hard for the top 3. It was. I think I had to take a couple like Xanax, trying to just calm down a little bit with these and actually listen. But number 2, man, was There's Nothing Left to Lose. And I know my critiques on a lot of the other albums, like the first 2, were they didn't have the full group. This one they didn't really either. They didn't have the Pat Smear or Chris Shiflett. Pat Smear had left mid tour of the Color and the Shape, so he didn't record on this one. It was just Dave Grohl, Nate Mendel, and Taylor Hawkins. So it was a trio album, their only trio album. They just add more people as the years go on, but it's you're talking about the Wasting Light and Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace having good flows. This has the best flow, honestly. It's the songs aren't as heavy on it. I'd say in terms of like heavy rock, they kind of lean like In Your Honor a little bit. They're not super heavy. If anything, they're all pretty light. Your heavy ones are like Stacked Actors and Breakout for sure. The first 2 songs and Stacked Actors. I try to learn on guitar. The guitar tuning on it is the low E strings tuned up to A, so you have two A strings on this one.
Weird.
So I kind of forgot how to play it, but it was an interesting song to try to learn, I should say. Then they have like songs like Aurora, and next year prop songs on this album, which is Ain't It the Life. Like this whole album have on the beat down some years and No One Will Bother You, Ain't It the Life. That's like, and your life, an ideal thing for me would be like chilling on the beach and like having nothing to do. Someone could listen to Ain't It the Life and be working in a factory, and that's their choice of how they want to live.
Right.
And they enjoy doing that, but they could have this song, and that's what this song is about. It doesn't matter how you want to live, but it's just about living, and that's what that song is to me. But yeah, man, great production. This was another one they did. You were talking about Wasting Light, and how they recorded it at home. Dave Grohl bought a cabin and they recorded this thing. So they were both recorded at homes of Dave Grohl. And they both sound amazing. They won a bunch of Grammys on this. I think you told me earlier this was the first one they won.
I believe I read that.
On.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead, and my number 2 is also There's Nothing Left to Lose from 1999. Yeah, I think this was their first of several Grammys, but I believe this was their first one. I don't think they won one for The Color and the Shape. right off the bat, my observation about this record is if Foo Fighters as a band is being pulled between hard rock and alternative rock stylistically, this was the one that probably leans the furthest to the alternative rock side. But that's absolutely not a criticism. I think they do that extremely well. It's also worth pointing out that Dave Grohl has said on several occasions, this is what he thinks their best album is. And you can see why. The songwriting is perhaps the single best collection of writing. I can't talk. The single best collection of tracks from a songwriting perspective on this record. The melodies are all super strong. You can distill these songs down to their essence, and there's all really strong ideas at the core. There's no filler on this record. Breakout is a great tune. Learning to Fly is a great tune. Overplayed, admittedly.
I didn't even talk about Learning to Fly.
Yeah,
I agree with you though. It's so overplayed.
It's overplayed. A great music video though. Again,
great music video.
Yeah. Foo Fighters don't write the most complex music, but these really highlights why the band has a following. And that's when you just boil it down to the essence. There's always super, super solid ideas at the cores of these tunes, melodically, structurally, lyrically. The one criticism I guess I would give of this is there's a song on this record called Gimme Stitches, which I think is probably the weakest cut if I had to pick one, just because I think that leans a little too far into the pop arena and loses some of their flavor that makes them distinctive. But MIA, Ain't It the Life, Next Year, these are super, super good songs that are emblematic of what was going on in their lives and the band's career at that point. Really tough to put this at number 2 because it's probably strong enough to be number 1, but I love my number 1 so much. I none of them I couldn't talk myself out of putting it up.
Me too, dude.
Well, go ahead with yours, man.
Yeah, number 1, Wasting Light. This is more of a personal thing for me, just because I listened to Foo Fighters growing up. This album came out in 2011, so I was either end of freshman year in high school or beginning of sophomore year in high school for me. So prior to that, and you mentioned that it was the longest gap between 2 studio albums, and I had heard all their stuff from when I was younger, and it was all amazing. But to me, this was all right, when I was really starting to listen to music. This was it's kind of a debut to Foo Fighters for me, and it was amazing. They picked up right where they left off. You said Pat Smear's back in the band. They had that full core that I was talking about, and all the again they recorded it at Dave Grohl's house. Bridges Burning, awesome opener.
Yeah.
Rope is their second song, man, and that's they never did that kind of groove before. It's such an interesting groove on that song. Say what you will about lyrics and other parts on that song, probably not their strongest, but the groove makes up for it. It's so cool. And I was telling you about this earlier. Deadmau5 did a remix back in the day when they put this out of Rope, and it sounds like that early 2000s EDM. So if you listen back to it today, it's wow, EDM's grown a lot in 10 years.
Yeah,
I can't believe this is 10 years old. Oh man,
we're getting old, Matt.
Who else do they have on that album? Bob Mould on Dear Rosemary.
Yeah, that's right.
From Husker Du. You want to Orlandria, great underrated song. And White Limo is my favorite from the album, just because of how the music video is great for it. The song is a headbanger. And it shows. I was talking about the deterioration of Dave's screaming, man. That song, he had done it on Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace with the Pretender, but man, he is screaming on this song like he was back in '95.
Yeah.
It was great. And I also wanted to bring this like these days, and Walk has a cool music video too. They're both. If you had to ask anyone off the street, those were probably the two most popular from this album. I want to bring up I Should Have Known, and it was in that documentary. We were talking about Butch Vig and Dave Grohl not having worked with each other since Nevermind. But you know who featured on bass was Chris Novoselic from Nirvana.
That's right. Yeah, I
the
forgot
bass
about that.
player, and he played bass on that track. So they kind of had a little Nirvana reunion on this album. Pat Smear was a late add to Nirvana for those that didn't know.
Yeah.
So they had a little reunion, if you will, even though I don't think they all tracked together. I think they may have like dubbed stuff, but it was
Yeah.
it's a cool album. They did it on tape. They just took it a step back, and you know it paid off. It was overall amazing.
Yeah. Man, it's hard to rank these top few, but I couldn't talk myself out of putting The Color and the Shape, their sophomore album from 1997, in my number one
I think
spot.
I think I had
Really,
that a little low.
yeah. I mean, it's so hard though. The top 5 or 6 are just so quality. It's hard to rank them, but this is really the debut of Foo Fighters, the band. Obviously we've talked about how the debut was basically just like a Dave Grohl solo project, and you can definitely hear the band's fuller. There seems to be a different dynamic to the songwriting and the structure and the energy of the songs because they've got a group writing them now. So right out the gate, like the intro track is, kind of just that, an intro track. But then like 2 and 3 hit you with Monkey Wrench and Hey Johnny Park, two of my favorite Foo Fighters songs right out the gate. And you're just like, damn, is this what I'm in for? Every time I get excited when I hear this album because those are such tight, awesome, banging tunes. And then obviously you've got My Hero and My Poor Brain, some other favorites of mine.
Dude,
off this record.
so you're talking about how it's like Hey Johnny Park and Monkey Wrench. So it's like, wow, yeah, this is what I'm getting into. And then it goes into My Poor Brain after Hey Johnny Park.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just like, what is going on? Like my mind is gonna explode.
Man, such a great album. The production is superb. This one and like most of their other projects, I believe, are mastered by Bob Ludwig, he's the best to do it. The slower, more melodic, pop-oriented song, "See You," is there. I guess if I had to pick a weak point, that would be, but that's still a good song. I mean, you can't dislike it. The dense, gritty bass line on "Empty Space," which is again a banger. Love that song. The title track is pretty good.
Space.
Yeah. Oh man. Everlong is obviously on this record. That's their most popular song, probably overall. And Walking After You is also a slower cut towards the tail end of this thing. That's a great early indicator that Dave Grohl was a really good songwriter, in addition to a drummer and singer and guitarist and everything else that he is. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't pick February Stars as a great cut off this, because that might be my favorite Foo Fighters song.
That's an overlooked one.
If I had to pick it, just the build and the payoff at the end when they finally just come in with everything they've got. They do that better than almost anybody, and they do it on that song better than most of their other attempts at doing so. It's just so good, man. I mean, what can you say about it? It's 90s alternative / hard rock at its finest. I think this is underrated in terms of like great albums of the 90s conversations, but
yeah,
it is worth noting also that for my money, this is the album that propelled Foo Fighters to the head of the post-grunge 90s band class of bands and artists. And they never gave that spot up, man. Everybody else has faded into history or, playing to a couple hundred people here or there. Foo Fighters are headlining arenas. They're coming out with new music. Wasting Light from 2011. That's well out of the 90s now. The decade, they skipped a whole decade. They're still making great music. Nobody is experiencing that degree of sustained success from their contemporaries like the Foo Fighters are. Just a great band, man. It was so hard to rank these.
Dude, that album, the way you described it, it's like a not like an aged wine or bourbon.
Yeah.
It probably it needed to sit a little bit when you're talking about it as like a great album of the 90s, but like um for those that like actually lived through the 90s, they could probably look back and reflect, and uh that needs to be up there. It's such a great album.
For sure, man. And that's for my money, it's their best. They have a couple mediocre ones and a lot of good ones, but this I think is probably my favorite. I think it's their best album for my money. Wasting Light, I know, was your number one. I love that too. Nothing wrong with it at all, but man, I just can't get over how much I like this album.
Yeah.
This was one I did not have to revisit because I listened to this one all the damn time.
Right.
Ah,
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was
No,
going to
sorry,
say
go ahead.
the idea that we had on the previous attempt at recording this for music videos, talking about some music videos on this channel at some point.
I
Would
was
be
gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, man. 'Cause who does music videos better than the Foo Fighters? They're all fantastic.
There's some good ones, man. Uh, I'd say if we had to do it, like they have some cool ones too. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some ones that aren't funny. Like, I think Sky's the Neighborhood's one.
Yeah.
It's like it's cool, but their funny ones are the best ones.
Yeah.
Like, honestly,
Walk, Learning to Fly. There's so many good ones. White Limo.
that's another like 3 hour conversation we could have on
Yeah.
Foo Fighters music videos.
Well, let me just, while we're on the subject of a 3 hour conversation, let me just double check that I actually did just record our second attempt there. Yeah.
It's recording. It's recording. I can see on my side it has a little button that says recording. So
Oh man, well, then
you're
you're
good.
partially to
I
blame.
didn't know that was an option.
I'll share the blame a little bit. Man, that sucked.
Yeah.
Missing that, but the second go around was just as fun, man. It's great to have you, Matt. This was a fun one to
Yeah,
do.
dude.
We'll definitely
Thanks
do some
for
more in the future.
thanks for indulging me on the Foo Fighters, man.
Oh, dude, thanks for
Yeah.
sitting through a whole nother take of the whole video. So that's it. I'm sure I'll have Matt on the channel for some other countdown at some point in the future, but that's all for now. Thanks for watching.